If you want a bandwagon to jump onto, what about the Brook Lopez All-Star bandwagon? That might be one that I want to attach myself to. Brook Lopez was sensational with 29 points, 7 threes, the defense. He was doing it all. And the Bucks perhaps unexpectedly beat the Cavs at home. Extremely shorthanded. Jordan Nwora was great. There was little contributors all over for the Bucks tonight. But all in all, in blue, fun was had at 5 4.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Bucks. My name's Kane Pittman. You can see and hear me on this show Monday to Friday and also find my work over at ESPN. And alongside me going back to back, it's Camille Davis on the post-game show for the Technical Foul podcast from Locked On Bucks. You all know Camille by now. And we're going to talk about a Bucks win over the Cavs. They moved to 11-3, tied in the loss column with the Boston Celtics at the top of the Eastern Conference. But before we get into it, we have to, of course, thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first watch or first listen of every single day. We really appreciate it. You guys know that you can wake up on a Monday through Friday. A show's going to be there for you to jump on and either listen to it, or if you're a real sicko, look at our faces on YouTube, on the TV, wherever you do it. But we appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. Jump in the comments, particularly after a win like tonight on YouTube, and let us know what you liked, because there was plenty to like from this Bucks team that had some unfamiliar lineups. Camille, shall we say? I don't want to bury the lead. We'll start with Brook Lopez, then we'll get into the lineups. But all the guys that we spoke about were out. There was a tease of a Pat Connaughton return. That didn't happen. Wesley Matthews was out. Grayson Allen was out. And then the usuals, Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, Joe Ingles. Who am I missing? I'm probably missing someone. No one was playing, but thank goodness Brook Lopez was.
Absolutely. And coming into this game, looking at the injury report, as you mentioned, no Wes.
It was depressing.
No Drew, no Grayson, no Pat, and then, of course, no Chris and no Joe Ingles. I was sitting here, I was like, what wings and guards do we actually even have left at this point if we don't have these guys playing? And the Bucks countered by going with a super jumbo lineup for most of the game. I mean, we were seeing lineups with, they started with Brook, Giannis, and Bobby out there. We saw lineups with Serge out there. It was three bigs out there for a majority of the game, which helped fuel their rebounding, because they out-rebounded the Cavaliers big time in this game, which I think helped fuel the offense. And coming into this game, too, thinking about the offense and how many struggles they've had, if you would have told me that Giannis would have had the game that he had and the Bucks would have still won this game with all the people who I mentioned were out, I would have been like, how? But as you mentioned, the lead here is Big Brook Lopez coming through with the 29 points tonight, 7-9 from three. He almost tied his Bucks record of 8 threes in the game, which I believe is second in Bucks history. I forget. I know Ray Allen hit 10 in the game before, and someone else. I'll have to double check on that. But Brook the Bucks would have been lost out at sea without Brook, from the offensive contributions that he was able to make to what he was able to bring defensively to the team as well. The Cavaliers not having Jared Allen out there, of course, helped the Bucks in that rebounding battle in those jumbo lineups. But again, having some versatile defenders out there, it worked out somehow, some way, some shape, some form. Those three big lineups were pretty good at fueling the team today.
It was almost like giving the Cavs a little bit of a taste of their own medicine. We've seen last year, for instance, they were going with Allen, Mobley, and was it Markkanen?
Markkanen,
Who was at the Cavs? It was Markkanen at the Cavs. He's doing crazy things with the Jazz this year, but it was Markkanen. So they were going with the big lineups, and then, as you mentioned, they can sort of have Kevin Love go through there. So we'll get into the matchups a bit, but just this Brook Lopez stuff to continue, because you mentioned the franchise record. So I've got it here. So Ray Allen did knock down 10 back in 2002. Michael Redd hit 9 in a game, also in 2002. It's crazy to think that the two franchise record for individual three-point games happened in 2002, when their threes weren't even as heavily featured as they are in the game right now. And then I've got a little trivia for you. So Bobby Portis has hit 8 in a game. Brook Lopez hit 8 in a game, of course, in Denver when Splash Mountain was founded. Is that what we call it? Established. And then Chris Middleton hit 8 in a game. And who was the other player that hit 8 in a game? I don't know if
I do know this
oh
because
my
I did see
goodness.
this, and when I saw who it was, I got really excited because he was one of my favorite players during some of the red and green times.
Skiles.
Carlos Delfino.
Yes, shout out to Scott Skiles. He was probably coaching that game. I'm not sure. When was that? 2011? Maybe not. The Bucks had a lot of coaches through that era, but Carlos Delfino, shout out to him wherever he is in the world right now. But look, Brook Lopez, and so the question I want to throw to you right now, because it was the defense as well. So the third quarter, he's banging down all those threes, but there was 3 or 4 possessions in a row where Lamar Stevens, I felt like he was just about to check himself out of the game because he's like, I can't keep embarrassing myself anymore by trying to score over Brook Lopez. Only credited with 3 blocks in this game, but we've spoke about it. 16 points thereabouts per game on offense, which is well above anything he's produced with the Bucks in his career over the last 4 seasons. Has to be in serious contention right now. He'd have to be a top 3 finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. So is there any argument that on current pace, given Drew Holiday's missed some games and started off a little bit scratchy, Chris Middleton hasn't played at all, that Brook Lopez is at least staking an early claim for his second All-Star appearance?
I feel like at this point, it would be unrealistic to say that he's not. When you look at honestly, what he's been able to do and what the Bucks have been able to do as one of the top teams in the East, Brook has been a staple of the Bucks' success at this point. Like, the defensive scheme works because Brook Lopez is absolutely fantastic at doing his job, even with the tweaks that they've made to it this year with guys staying a little bit closer to shooters, not over helping as much, and leaving Brook on a little bit more of an island than what he had been seeing before. And he's still producing. Although he was only credited with 3 blocks tonight, he affected so many other shots. It's just so difficult to shoot over him consistently. And you look at the defense, and we all know that, like, Defensive Player of the Year, he should probably be in some of those talks as well at this point. And then you look at what he's been able to do offensively so far this year. Eric Name with The Athletic posted a great article about how Brook was taking his 3-point shooting seriously over the summer and some of the ways that he was attempting to get better at shooting with that Nwora system. So seeing him knock down 7 threes tonight, seeing him able to pace the Bucks. I mean, even outside of tonight, just what he's been able to do, scoring the ball even inside of the arc. Like, he's just been able to have some more opportunity to show, not necessarily he's Brooklyn Brook, but this Brook Lopez is a valuable piece to what the Bucks are doing. Without his scoring contributions, especially with all the injuries we've been having, the Bucks record would be it would not be 11-3 right now. I can tell you that.
No, he's been sensational, particularly because coming into the season, we were curious about what he was going to look like when you're approaching approaching your mid-30s. I don't think that's offensive. If Brook is listening to this, I think that's a fair comment. I think that's the reality. Approaching his mid-30s, you have major back surgery. It's unclear how you're going to return for that. But I do wonder, this back, it's kind of a mysterious injury. We've never got any exact or clear details about it all. And I wonder whether it was just maybe something he was carrying for a long time. And maybe he's actually feeling better than he has in multiple years, because he certainly looks to be moving okay. I thought the Cavs early in this game, if we talk about the defense, they scored 37 points in the first quarter. I thought they were hitting some extremely tough shots. But they were also running some pretty effective offense. And you saw with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, particularly in the pick and roll, they were able to get Evan Mobley free for one with a little pocket pass. He kind of threw it down. I'm reluctant to call it a poster on Giannis because Giannis was partially just trying to get out of the way. But you don't see that a lot, where guards from the opposition are able to pick apart the Brook Lopez and Giannis defense. So if you had have asked me that whether it was possible the Bucks would keep the Cavs to under 100 points when they gave up 37 in the first quarter, I definitely would have said no. But outside of Brook, there were some other fun contributors in this game. Jordan Nwora probably deserves some credit for some of his shot making. So we'll get to Jordan Nwora and some of the other players in this game as we continue to move through this podcast. But first, as I do my best here to try and actually see what I'm looking for. I'll tell you what, this is a professional operation we're running here, Camille. But this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com. /locked on and get your way to being your best self. And listen, I can say this from personal experience. As you get older, you probably come to the realization, Camille, that talking to people can certainly help. Now, I definitely went through the phase in my life where you try and be a hero, and it's just not necessary. And unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel a little bit stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's a career change. I can relate to that one. A new relationship or becoming a parent. I can't relate to that one. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenging emotions and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists available 100% online. Plus, it's affordable. So just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist at any time. It couldn't be any simpler. So there's no waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. Also, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. Plenty of sports news going on and plenty of other news around the NBA as well. So they'll have you covered in all that. And I would like to think they would mention Brook Lopez as an all-star, but they also might not get to that. So as we get back to this game, midway through the second quarter, Camille, the Bucks are down by 10. I mentioned that the Cavs are scoring at will. And I was thinking to myself, this is probably following the script that I thought was going to occur, just looking at the lineups. And sure, there's no Jared Allen for the Cavs, but I don't think the losses for either team are very comparable here. I think that the Bucks certainly had the more shorthanded lineup. And I thought, if you're going to look for a game where how you can stay in it, it's energy, it's scrapping. And you mentioned the rebounds, but I thought the offensive rebounds in particular was an area during that second quarter where the Bucks were able to generate some second opportunities. They were able to stay in the game. And that's where I thought guys like Beauchamp and even AJ Green had a couple of offensive rebounds there. Marjon Beauchamp ended with 4 offensive rebounds, and he didn't shoot the ball well. And we've spoken a lot about Beauchamp the last couple of days and how his shooting can be streaky, and he certainly looks like a confident shooter. But I think overall, if we keep talking about Beauchamp, this was exactly what we spoke about on yesterday's podcast, Camille, where you want to see how he holds up in different environments, in different matchups. And tonight, he's a defensive assignment for the majority of the night was Donovan Mitchell. And then if he wasn't on Donovan Mitchell, he was guarding Darius Garland. So this is really fun stuff. And I thought that, again, tonight, not his best night, but I still thought he was impactful in little ways. And overall, I thought the energy of those guys, Mamu had some nice minutes there as well. All these guys that hadn't got a lot of minutes kept the Bucks in it when it was looking like it might have gone the other way.
And that's what you hope for, that even if the shot is not falling, you're able to affect the game in other ways. And Marjon was an example of that. He had a very tough defensive assignment trying to stop that backcourt in particular. That's a real welcome to the NBA moment for a rookie. Like, I don't care how talented you are. Like, Donovan Mitchell is a bucket. Darius Garland, first 50-point game in the NBA this season. Like, these are two guys who know how to score. I mean, Mitchell had 16 in the first quarter alone. So it seemed as if it was going to be a very long night there, but Marjon kept the energy up. He kept trying. He kept hustling. And I believe at some point, too, they kind of switched Javon Carter more so onto that Donovan Mitchell assignment, which gave him some fits as well. So it's a team sport. So you hope that even if the shot's not falling, like Marjon 1 for 8 from the field tonight, 0 for 3 from 3, affect the game in other ways. He was still +7. We know plus minus, ratings taken with a grain of salt, but he was able to still contribute in a healthy way for the team here. And on top of that, too, I mean, Jordan Nwora came out and he really showed up. And as we've talked about before, the minutes battle, so to speak, between Marjon and between Jordan Nwora. There have been calls for, Marjon to get Jordan's minutes from some Bucks Twitter, and seeing how they're playing and seeing how the season was unfolding for him. And Jordan had a few rough games, some rough outings there. So it was really nice to be able to see him have a pretty good game on both sides of the ball here, scoring 21 points. The only other Buck player to score over 20 points besides Brook Lopez. Who would have thought? Jordan Nwora and Brook Lopez leading scorers tonight. But Jordan came through. He did his thing, got a timely steal. He was playing defense. He was hustling. It didn't seem as if the game was too fast for him. He just took what the game was giving him and contributed the way that he could. Even Serge Ibaka. I mean, he came out and had some pretty decent minutes tonight too. And again, in those jumbo lineups. So it was a team win, honestly and truly, because as mentioned a little bit earlier, wasn't necessarily the greatest game from Giannis, but again, you affect the games in other ways. And a not great game from Giannis was a near triple-double. 16 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, only shooting 6 from 18 from the field. And again, the rest of the team had to kind of pick him up a little bit on that scoring front. But it was a real fun one to watch how a lot of these other guys came and stepped up, brought energy. It wasn't like that Atlanta game where it's like the Bucks kind of get punched a little bit in the mouth. And it's like, I'm not exactly sure if they're going to be able to overcome this. The Cavs kept coming, but the Bucks kept coming too in this game, which was really, really nice to see. As you mentioned, they were down by 10 in the second, ended up going into overtime or into halftime up by 1, and then completely took off in the third quarter. That third quarter was amazing to watch. I'm not sure why some of the Cavaliers were leaving Brook open at that point in the game, but third quarter was big. Fourth quarter, the Cavaliers punched back a little bit more, but the Bucks held strong, and it was a real good team win for them.
So the Jordan Nwora stuff, if we drill down into this a little bit more, because this is interesting to me. So he did tonight, and it's hard because he has had a tough start to the season shooting the ball. And ultimately, that's how he's going to be judged, whether he's playing well or not playing well. Because I think even tonight, and we saw a couple of, like, to end the first half and to end the third quarter, there was transition plays where it's like, okay, just get Giannis the ball and you probably got a bucket to finish the quarter. And you could see that he was frustrated. He was trying to do the right thing. He wasn't able to do it. So he still, his value to this team is as a scorer. And sometimes we get people that listen to the show and say, geez, you're harsh on Jordan Nwora, cut him some slack. But it's just looking at what his skill set is and where it fits in this team, and it's as a scorer. So tonight you got exactly what you get in a perfect scenario because he hits the 5 threes out of his 6 shots. So you think about it and you say, I agree with you. I thought he had some good moments, getting his hands in, deflections. He had that one play where he stripped, I think it was Stevens going to the basket off his knee. So again, I don't think effort necessarily has been a problem defensively for Jordan. It's just whether he's ever going to be that above average defender. But tonight, on a night where you needed some extra scorers and you needed some people to knock down threes, particularly in the first quarter where, again, the Cavs were threatening to get away with the game. Nwora had 10 points in that first quarter. He had the perfect game for him, the perfect Jordan Nwora role-playing game. Again, is he capable of having a really good game where he doesn't score? And so that's why long-term, and that's why I think some of the best games you've seen Jordan Nwora have been when other players haven't been playing, because all of a sudden he gets a more featured role on offense. He can score a little bit more. So again, I think he's an NBA player, and I think he's an NBA caliber scorer. We've seen it enough. It's not bashing Jordan Nwora. It's not criticizing him on a night where he was really, really damn good and really, really important. It's just the reality that his life as a scorer is going to be difficult because you're going to see people judge him by whether or not his shots go in. And then it's like, where does he land as a three-point shooter moving forward? So it's an interesting conversation, but they needed him tonight and he was awesome. And I thought it was just cool to see him smiling. Yeah. Sometimes he's felt like you watch him and he's under pressure. Maybe he's not enjoying himself that much, but tonight he was having fun, which is a cool thing.
Absolutely. Went up and caught a nice lob tonight, knocked down.
Okay, now let's talk about that. I don't remember. So he's thrown down dunks before.
Yeah.
But he never really strikes you as the most athletic guy. But the 2-hand lob finish, that caught me by surprise.
It was beautiful. It was fun. At that point, it was like, okay, the Bucks are really hooping tonight. Like when they got that alley-oop off, that's when I said, okay, they're hooping right now. Yeah. Like things are just going well right now.
All right. Today's episode is also brought to you by, and by the way, we're going to talk about Giannis here in a second, because I think there's a conversation to be had about Giannis. He had good moments tonight, but across the course of the season, we've seen him not be able to finish the way we we've come to expect by his own lofty standards. So we'll get to Giannis in just a second, but today's episode is brought to you by Sweatblock. And when I was talking about Sweatblock, I was talking about my trip to New Zealand last week, but what I neglected to say is that I also don't really love flying. I mean, you may say, that's kind of crazy, Kane. You flew to Milwaukee 1 billion times. You're flying all over, going to all these games, but I don't love it. Definitely, yeah, you get a bit of turbulence, Camille, and I'm gonna be sweating. There's no doubt about that. I got a little bit rough on this flight to New Zealand there for a little while, and I was thinking to myself, rather than having the couple of drinks that I have normally to try and calm the nerves, why don't I just have some Sweatblock? Probably better for my health, I would suggest. So if you or you know someone that is experiencing embarrassing sweat or odor, I don't know about the odor part. I have to ask other people, but they should try Sweatblock. You can save 20% with the promo code locked on at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon, where it's been a bestseller for the past 10 years with over 10K 5-star reviews. So don't miss this opportunity to try Sweatblock. Save 20% off with the promo code locked on at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. All right, let's talk a bit of Giannis here. I've had a few people tweet at me their concerns about where he's at. Why is he missing these shots? Why doesn't he seem to have the touch? Is he injured? Is he sore? You mentioned the 16 points tonight, 6 for 18 from the field, 4 for 11 from the free throw line. Look, the free throw stuff, this is an ongoing story. And potentially there's some fatigue stuff there. I'm not sure. I'm not going to try and dive into the free throw stuff right now. But, just watching this game tonight, to me, there was a stage in the first quarter where the Bucks started to score a little bit, and Steve Novak said, geez, the paint is open all of a sudden. I said, well, I thought to myself, well, it's not hard to understand why the paint is open all of a sudden. It's because Giannis is on the bench. Because when Giannis was on the floor, with the lineups that the Bucks had out there, with Beauchamp, Carter, Bobby Portis, those guys can shoot the three and will shoot the three, but not at a rate. And you might laugh and say, well, Brook had 7 tonight. But Brook can actually shoot over anyone anyway. So even if you're defending him to the three-point line, we've seen before, he's going to shoot over you. So there isn't the guys on the floor right now with all the injuries for the opposition to say, okay, let's guard them out on the three-point line. There's no Grayson Allen. He's not playing. So they're just saying, let's just have 5 guys stand around the paint. So if you're asking why it's difficult for Giannis at the moment to get easy points outside of transition and outside of just being a legendary scorer at the rim, I just think that he's having to work so hard without his star mates playing alongside him. Like, I agree that he's clearly just out of touch a little bit in terms of his jump shot, even the mid-ranges. We haven't seen him, the three-point shot hasn't looked great. We've seen the free throws incredibly short. So I think that there is definitely something to the fact that he's just in a rough patch in terms of his touch. But I think it's pretty simple. Nothing is coming easy for him without the offensive threats in the lineup.
That is the exact language that I was going to use. Everything is hard for Giannis right now. They are packing the paint. Like, we've seen Giannis deal with teams packing the paint, but before he had those release valves in Chris and Drew and Grayson and Wes, so on and so forth. So without some of those safety valves, that would take that pressure off of him when he is trying to drive. It's just been difficult for him. And when he's getting around the rim, he might be missing some shots that we're used to him seeing. Even tonight, I believe it was in that third quarter during that big run where he got a few up and could have been fouls, but they weren't fouls. And he's just missing here. And he's like laying on the ground. And the rest of the team is like gone and they're hustling and they're trying to get the ball back. And it was like, I'm not sure if it's fatigue right now with Giannis in this moment, if it's frustration, could be a little bit of both, but it just wasn't easy for him. But I wouldn't say it's anything to be cause for concern of. No. Like I mentioned before, November's just been a little bit rough for him. And you think about what's been happening so far in this month with all of the injuries, it kind of makes sense. He had that great game against Detroit, against Minnesota. He struggled from the field, but he still was able to put up like 26 points or so. Then we had the 2 games against Atlanta, back-to-back L's, and Atlanta's tough with the players they can throw at them defensively. And then tonight you have Cleveland with Mobley out there. And again, they were just doing all that they could to pack the paint and make it difficult for him. So it makes some sense when you're looking at the whys behind the numbers that Giannis is putting up. The free throw shooting has been interesting. I wanted to say, like, it looks like the free throw routine's gotten a little bit longer again, not to the 10-second counting, but it seems as if it's not as quick as it was to start the season. And that could just because he was coming off playing in the Euro basket where he only has 5 seconds to shoot the free throw. So his routine was a little bit different throughout Euro basket. He comes back to the NBA, he gets that full 10 seconds. So I'm not sure if he's still just kind of filling that out, but the free throws have been just a little disappointing. But again, that's a conversation that we've had with Giannis from time to time when it comes to the free throw shooting. It can be streaky, as we know at this point. Like you said, though, I'm not really too concerned about him at this time. It's interesting to see. But again, what makes him that superstar that he is that he's able to affect the game in ways outside of just scoring. So even when it's a tough, what do you have tonight? A tough 16 against Cleveland, being able to still grab 12 rebounds, still being able to affect the game defensively, still being able to set his teammates up because he does draw so much attention. He's still able to contribute to winning basketball and the overall team aspect of it. So you would hope that as some guys are coming back and the spacing on the floor does get better, that Giannis' shooting percentages go up a little bit. We'll be very interested to see how he looks on Friday against Philly because we know how those Philly games tend to be, but not looking too far ahead at the moment.
Yeah, long story short, for me, zero concern. I've got zero concern about Giannis at this point in time. He also is, let's be honest, he's missing his bread and butter. He's missing his bread and butter running mate in the pick and roll. Chris Middleton, the money play for the Bucks. Anytime they need a bucket, put those two in a pick and roll, and he hasn't had that for one game this year. You take away Drew Holiday, another creator and a guy that you really trust as a ball handler, it just gets challenging. It just gets challenging, and as great as Giannis is, 1 on 5 at times can become a little bit difficult. And as for the injury stuff, I always just run under the assumption that he's always sore. We heard him in the press conference saying that he got up the other day because he didn't want his mum worrying in the crowd, which brings a tear to your eye. He's just a lovely man. But no, I'm not too concerned about Giannis at this point. But while all these guys are out, what do you need? Someone else to score and definitely some guys to knock down some threes, and they were able to do that today, which was fun. Before we wrap it up, we have to mention it. Blue jerseys, blue court. First look, what'd you think?
It's a chef's kiss. It was absolutely beautiful. It was beautiful. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, but the city edition is absolute flames. And even all of the apparel that's coming out of the city edition, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I thought the Bucks looked great in blue. We're undefeated in blue, which is even more important than anything else. So I am a big, big fan of the city jerseys this year.
I better send you some cash for doing this podcast then, Camille, because you're going to buy yourself some merchandise at the Bucks store. There's no doubt about that. I will say, I tell you what makes a big difference, the court. Because we've seen them have different, jerseys before. And having the blue court as well changes things. I was trying to picture in my head, what would this look like on the green court? And I think the simple answer, not as good.
Yeah, the court adds so much to it. Just even seeing how the arena looked with the Jumbotron all blue and everything around's blue and the court's blue. And it was just kind of this is pretty cool. I know some people don't like having so many different jerseys, but I feel like when you're able to kind of get this new feeling in the middle of a long season, it's kind of entertaining. It's interesting. I'm a fan of it.
I'm with you. I like it. We've probably got more to talk about this game, but we can save it for tomorrow because we've got another podcast tomorrow, and then we're looking ahead to Bucks and the Sixers. Maybe the most anticipated matchup that the Bucks play. We know Bucks fans like getting stuck into the Sixers and hopefully winning, particularly on the road. That would be a lot of fun. Before we drop that episode tomorrow, though, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, talking all sports, the rest of the NBA, everything else that's going on in the world, probably NFL, I would assume. We're heading to the weekend again. I can't believe it's nearly the weekend, Camille. But back-to-back podcasts for us. Are you fatigued? Do you need load management?
No, I'm good. I'm making up for lost time here, Kane.
That's right. No, we appreciate it. Second post-game pod you've been a part of on Locked On Bucks, and I believe we're 2-0.
I feel like I've been on some after we lost,
but
we will just forget those happen.
Just trying to end the podcast on a good note, but I guess Camille is too honest, so we'll leave it there. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, jump in the comments, subscribe on the audio platforms as well, and leave 5 stars, all those types of things. I always feel like I'm discriminating against the audio listeners, but we appreciate you guys too. So make sure you do all that. We love it. It helps us, and we'll continue to do this show Monday to Friday, including tomorrow. So for Camille and myself, take it easy. Enjoy the win. Speak to you guys tomorrow.